February 10th, 2025. A call comes into 911 from a quiet town in Wyoming. The voice on the other end is trembling, gasping for air between words. Then a confession. I did something terrible. I can't live with this. The dispatcher asks questions, trying to keep her talking. There's a pause, just breathing, unsteady, fragile. Then silence. The line goes dead. At that moment, police are already on their way. Their radios crackle. Their sirens cut through the cold night. They don't know what they're walking into. They only know it's bad. They arrive at a house that, just hours earlier, looked like any other. A place where 4 little girls lived. A mother who was supposed to keep them safe. Inside, nothing will ever be the same again. The officers move quickly, stepping into the darkness of the home. The first thing they notice is a smell, gunpowder, lingering in the air. Then the silence, a silence that feels wrong. They see them, 3 children lifeless, a mother, her body slumped over, and then movement, a child, still breathing, but barely, a 7-year-old girl, clinging to life in the middle of a nightmare. The officers call for medics, their voices tight, urgent. But there is nothing to be done for the others. 3 young lives, gone in an instant, and the woman who ended them, gone as well. In a town where tragedy was something you only saw on the news, reality had just changed forever. How does a mother get to this point? What happened inside that house in the moments before the trigger was pulled? Some will say she was a monster. Others will say she was sick. The truth lies somewhere in between. Tranyelle Harshman, 32 years old, a mother, a wife, a woman struggling with demons no one could see. Her life, from the outside, looked like any other. Family photos, social media posts filled with smiles. But beneath it all, something was breaking. Postpartum depression, post-traumatic stress, an illness that, left untreated, can take hold of the mind in ways most will never understand. The people around her saw signs, but no one imagined this. No one thought it would end like this. Now, a father is left to grieve his daughters. A community is left asking how they missed the warning signs. And a child, the only survivor, is left to face a world that no longer looks the same. This isn't just a story about loss. It's about the silent battles people fight. The cries for help that go unnoticed, and the question no one can ever fully answer. Could this have been prevented? In Byron, Wyoming, life moves at a different pace. There are no skyscrapers, no heavy traffic, no constant noise. Just open fields, quiet streets, and a community where everyone knows everyone. For years, Tranyelle Harshman was part of that world. She shopped at the same grocery store, walked her children to the same school, and exchanged pleasantries with the same familiar faces. She wasn't a stranger. She wasn't an outsider. She belonged here. But even in the most tightly woven communities, some struggles remain unseen. Those closest to Tranyelle describe her as a mother who never hesitated to put her children first. A woman who had moments of warmth and laughter, but also moments where something felt distant, detached. At times, she seemed exhausted, overwhelmed. But who wouldn't be? For children, daily responsibilities, and the quiet burden of mental health struggles few truly understood. There were glimpses of something deeper. Days when she canceled plans. Moments when her responses felt hollow, as if she were somewhere else entirely. Some thought it was just stress. Others assumed she'd get through it, like she always did. But on February 10th, all those small, passing concerns became something far more than anyone could have imagined. Inside the Harshman home, the day started like so many before it. For little girls waking up to their mother's voice, the sound of cereal being poured into bowls, the shuffle of tiny feet across the hardwood floor. Tranyelle Harshman was up early. She made breakfast, helped her daughters get dressed, and sent them off to school. Nothing out of the ordinary, Nothing that would hint at the horror that was only hours away. Around 8:30 a.m., a neighbor stepped outside to warm up her car. Across the street, she saw Tranyelle standing in her driveway, staring at the snow-covered ground. Motionless. She wasn't on her phone, wasn't checking the mail, just standing there. The neighbor thought about calling out to her, but something held her back. Instead, she got into her car and drove away, never knowing that would be the last time she'd see Tranyelle alive. At 10:15 a.m., security cameras at a small grocery store in town captured Tranyelle walking inside. She moved slowly, aimlessly. A cashier remembers seeing her that morning. She bought a few basic items: milk, bread, snacks for the kids. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. The cashier remembers asking, "How's your morning?" Tranyelle gave a small smile. "Same as always," she said, and then she left. But it wasn't the same as always. In the days leading up to this moment, small signs of unraveling had been there, hidden in plain sight. Her social media posts had become less frequent, and when she did post, they carried a different tone, a quiet desperation disguised as casual thoughts. A week before, she had written, "Some days feel heavier than others." 3 days before the shooting, another post, "Just trying to keep my head above water." Most people skimmed past them, assuming she was just venting, just tired. A mom of 4 feeling overwhelmed. Nothing more. But behind closed doors, her world was collapsing. Friends had noticed she wasn't answering calls. Text messages went unread. The people who normally heard from her every day were starting to wonder if something was wrong. Her husband, Cliff, was away at work that morning, unaware of the storm that was building inside his home. He had no idea that by the time he returned, his world would be unrecognizable. At 2:45 p.m., the school bus pulled up in front of the Harshman home. The children ran inside, their backpacks bouncing on their shoulders, their voices filled with the sound of stories from the day. What happened next, no one will ever fully understand. The call comes in at 4:36 p.m. A woman's voice, shaking unsteady, breaks through the static of the emergency line. "I did something terrible. I can't live with this." The dispatcher, trained for moments like this, tries to keep her talking, asks where she is, asks what happened. Tranyelle doesn't answer right away. There's breathing, shallow, erratic. Then, finally, she speaks. "My kids." Another pause, a sharp inhale. "I shot my kids." The dispatcher's voice remains calm, steady. "Are they still breathing?" No response. "Tranyelle, stay with me. Help is on the way." A soft, almost whisper-like, "I can't." And then the line goes dead. Officers are already en route. They don't know what they're walking into. They only know time is against them. Sirens wail through the quiet streets of Byron. Neighbors step out of their homes, confused. Nothing like this happens here. Nothing ever has. Within minutes, officers reach the Harshman residence. The house looks normal from the outside. No signs of the horror waiting inside. Guns drawn, they push through the front door. And then silence. A silence so heavy it feels like the air has been sucked from the room. The first thing they see is the living room, still, untouched. A pair of children's shoes by the couch, a blanket draped over the armrest. A home frozen in time. But as they step further inside, the reality sets in. Down the hall, a bedroom door is slightly open. An officer nudges it wider. The smell of gunpowder lingers. And then the bodies. 3 little girls. Lifeless. One still in her pajamas. Another clutching a small stuffed animal. And then movement. A faint rise and fall of a tiny chest. A shallow gasp of air. 7-year-old Olivia, barely breathing. Somehow, against all odds, alive. The radio crackles. An officer's voice, tight with urgency. We have a child still breathing. Get medics in here now. As paramedics storm the house, another officer steps into the master bedroom. There, slumped against the wall, is Tranyelle Harshman. A gun in her hand, a self-inflicted wound. Her body, motionless. The woman who made the call. The woman who took the lives of her children. The woman who, in her final moment, chose not to face what she had done. The officers don't speak. They don't have to. What they've walked into will never leave them. As the radio echoes with calls for backup, for forensic teams, for child services, one urgent mission takes priority. Saving Olivia. Within minutes, she's rushed out of the house. Paramedics working frantically to stabilize her tiny frame. She's loaded into an ambulance, then airlifted to Salt Lake City. A child who should have been playing with her sisters, now fighting for her life in a hospital bed. Back at the scene, the house remains eerily still. Yellow crime scene tape flutters in the cold evening wind. Neighbors gather at a distance, whispering, crying, struggling to comprehend what has just happened. Inside, officers begin piecing together the timeline. Shell casings, the firearm, the placement of each body. Every detail matters. Every second counts. But no matter how much evidence they collect, one question lingers. Why? Investigators move carefully through the Harshman home, documenting every detail. The placement of the bodies, the position of the gun, the spent shell casings on the bedroom floor, a legally owned handgun, a single weapon used to end 4 lives, 3 taken, 1 barely clinging to survival. No signs of struggle, no defensive wounds. The children were likely asleep or unaware, their final moments quiet without fear. Autopsy reports later confirm what officers already suspected. The shots were fired at close range. A crime carried out with chilling precision. But the why? That's the question no forensic report can fully answer. Mental health records paint a picture of a woman battling demons few had fully seen. Tranyelle had struggled with postpartum depression for years. Each pregnancy taking her deeper into an emotional darkness she never truly escaped. PTSD, anxiety, emotional exhaustion, a mind weighed down by something even those closest to her couldn't fully grasp. In the days after the tragedy, her family speaks out. They replay conversations, miss signs, moments that now seem painfully clear. Her sister's voice is quiet, filled with regret. She was crying out for help, but we didn't know how bad it really was. Her mother, through tears, I just wish she would have told me. I just wish I had known. But no one carries the weight of this loss heavier than Cliff Harshman, a husband who left for work one morning and returned to find his world in ruins. In his first public statement, Cliff doesn't lash out. He doesn't place blame. He doesn't let the world paint his wife as a monster. His voice is steady but broken. She loved those girls. She wasn't evil. She was sick. And we didn't see just how sick she was. Some struggle to understand his words. Others see them as a desperate attempt of a grieving man to make sense of the unimaginable. But one truth remains. Tranyelle Harshman didn't just take the lives of her children. She was also a victim, trapped in a mind that had turned against her. And now, those left behind are left to wonder, could this have been prevented? Byron, Wyoming, is a town that rarely makes headlines. But now, it is a community in mourning. A candlelight vigil is held outside the Harshman home. Dozens gather, their faces illuminated by flickering flames. Flowers, stuffed animals, and handwritten notes pile up at the doorstep. The grief is raw, Parents hold their children a little tighter. Strangers embrace. No one has the right words. A GoFundMe account is set up to help cover funeral expenses. Another fund is launched for Olivia's medical care. Donations pour in from across the country. In a hospital room in Salt Lake City, Olivia fights for her life. The bullet caused severe brain trauma, but she is alive, hooked up to machines, unconscious, but breathing. Her biological father, Quinn Blackmer, shares an update online. She's fighting. She's strong. Doctors remain cautious. The road ahead is uncertain, but as long as there is a pulse, there is hope. Meanwhile, back in Wyoming, Sheriff Ken Blackburn struggles to hold back emotion as he addresses reporters. His voice wavers. This is one of the hardest cases I've ever worked. A tragedy like this doesn't just affect one family. It ripples outward, leaving an entire town forever changed. The aftermath of this tragedy raises difficult questions. How many families are silently struggling? How many cries for help go unheard? Experts in mental health speak out. Untreated postpartum depression can lead to devastating consequences. The signs are often dismissed, overlooked, or misunderstood. Tranyelle Harshman was not the first mother to suffer in silence, and she won't be the last. Meanwhile, Olivia's fight continues. Her recovery is uncertain, but she has already defied the odds. Each small sign of progress brings hope to those who refuse to give up on her. Her story is not over. For those watching, this is more than just a tragic case. It's a reminder that mental health struggles don't always look the way we expect. That behind closed doors, someone you know may be suffering. If you or someone you love is struggling, help is available. Crisis hotlines, support groups, medical professionals, resources exist. A single conversation could change everything. It could save a life. Tragedies like this remind us of the hidden battles people face. If only help had come sooner. What are your thoughts on this case? Could anything have changed the outcome? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that needs to be told.